So, namaskar and greetings to all. I have come here before, 2018. I was in the same hall. You can hear me? No problem. Good, very good acoustics here. Yeah. So, usually when I go for a satsang, always, including now, I don't want to call it a talk, I want to call it a satsang. I don't decide the subject which I have to talk about. The moment I decide on a subject, it all gets messed up. When we sit down and keep our mind open and allow our thoughts to flow, then it becomes a satsanga. Otherwise, the meaning of the word satsanga is sat and sanga, two words. Sat meaning the real or the truth, as opposed to what we think is real and true. Maybe it is not, maybe. And Sangha is a group of people sitting together to understand this problem of whether something is real, or if it is not real, then what is real. So, this is a satsanga. So, I am going to start with that. There is ancient Shloka from the Upanishads. Now, this is the 150th birth anniversary of the great yogi Aurobindo. I am aware that he has written a beautiful translation of the Ishavasya Upanishad. I have gone through it in a way. So, before I come to that, to the Ishavasya Upanishad, let me go to another Shloka from the Upanishads, which is very, very interesting in the sense that it is not meant for a small group of people or a little community, it's meant for the whole world. This is something that we have to remember, that the ancient teachings that come from India are not confined to any small group or any small cult or anything of that kind. It's a universal teaching, because one of the important things to note is that it is the Upanishads that declare Loka, samastha, sukhino, bhavantu, which means may the whole world, Loka, here we don't even have to confine Loka to one Loka. May all the realms be happy. Sukhino bhavantu, let there be no pain. So, the rishis who discovered this truth found that when this is understood, then the yogi becomes a lover of humanity as a whole. Which is why I am so happy that you have invited me to come here, that I am sitting here and talking in a place which retains the memories of Sri Aurobindo and the Mata. So, what I was going to say, the Shloka I was going to base our discussion or talk today starts with Om, like old ancient mantras. Om, Poornamada, Poornamidam, Poornat Poornamaduchyate, Poornasya Poornamadaya Poornameva Vashishyate. Which means the Upanishads declare, and it is also the experience of those who have traveled the path and perhaps reached the goal, that the origin of all things, the origin of this entire universe that we see, the true origin, the root of this universe is complete, Purna. The word Purna means fulfilled, complete, nothing more to be added. So when you say Poornamada, it means that from which this universe has come is complete, is Purna. Now the next sentence is what makes us think a little bit, because it says Poornamidam. That is Purna. Okay, we can say maybe that is Purna, we don't know. Maybe it is complete, it is the source. Upanishad says so, the Shruti says so, so it could be true, could be true. Well, from my point of view, true. But Poornamidam is not so easy to understand, because we are always not Purna. We are always incomplete. The Upanishad says Poornamada, Poornamidam, Purnat, Poornamaduchyate. From that completeness, this completeness has come. Questionable whether this is complete. Purnasya Purnamathaya. Even though this has come from that, Purnameva Vashishyate. It remains always Purna. Nothing has been reduced. Nothing has been subtracted from that. It is still remains the whole, and yet this has come from that, and this is also whole. Now the question is, if this is Purna by itself, if, let's say it's a hypothesis at the moment, why do we always feel apurna, incomplete? Our daily experience, the whole of evolution, the whole of movement of life is that we feel incomplete and we are trying to complete ourselves. We have everything, we feel something is missing. We have no money, then we think if you make money, then I will become Purna. Many people have made money. I get to see people who have made tons of money, but they're not Purna. They feel they're not complete. There's something is missing out there. Happiness is missing. So this whole process is understanding or thinking that we are incomplete and trying to complete this process through various activities, through various belief systems, through actions and so on, which is the whole of civilization. The whole world is moving this way. If we were complete, if we knew we were complete, there was no need to complete ourselves, right? We are incomplete. Like when I'm alone and young, when I am able to sing songs and walk along the beach with no connections, no conditioning, nothing and so on. So I think, and I think now I am nice and complete, everything is fine. But apparently it is not so, because there rises an urge to share it with somebody. I feel if I share, if I have a partner, then maybe I will be happier, I will be more complete. So I look for a girlfriend or maybe a wife, and then what happens? Do I get complete? Maybe, for some time. No, please, I'm not discouraging young people who are in love. We have all gone through this, okay? I'm a married man myself, and I have 2 kids. But then, whatever we achieve, whatever we attain in this process of so-called completing the incompleteness, the emptiness that we find, we always end up saying that it's still incomplete. There's still something missing, we want more. We have people who I get sometimes invited to, I get invited to a small kutir where the fisherman cooks his meal. And out of great affection gives me a piece of fish and say, eat it, I eat it. There is love there, right? Who cares about this, whether it's fish or what? So, and I also get invited to places of people who seem to have from outward, when we view from outside, they seem to have everything. They have a fleet of cars, they have, you name it, they have everything. Why are they calling me to dinner? Because they are feeling empty, they want to fill their emptiness. So, if you follow what the Upanishad says, listen, then we are complete, but we find that we are not complete. So is the Upanishad inaccurate, or are we inaccurate in our assessment of the Upanishad? What is happening? Now, the fact is that if we can look within us, see all our joys and sorrows and everything that we enjoy is what in the Vedantic language is called the pravritti marga, the moving outwards, which is natural for a human being to move outside. If one understands the nivritti marga, which means as you move out, you move in, go within. If you can reverse your senses and turn back within, in the essence of one's being, when the mind is quiet and silent, and the mind is not distracted by the innumerable desires that occupy the human mind, when the mind in the midst of the battlefield of Kurukshetra is still quiet, and in that stillness, then you figure out what is this Poornata that is within us. Then what the Upanishad says, Poornamada, Poornamidam, is understood because that Purna is in our own self, it is nowhere else to look for. And when this Purnata is understood, then I think the mind then ascends to a higher realm. Maybe midway it meets that which descends from the higher realm. And this combination of the two is called yoga. Now the definition of yoga, according to Patanjali, who is supposed to be the authority on yoga, the one text that everybody claims to be the authority on the yoga darsana, apart from the ancient yoga Upanishads, which come very early from the Krishna Yajurveda and so on, is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, it's very interesting to note that the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are divided into 4 chapters, and the first chapter is not practice. The first chapter is an exploration into consciousness. Where are we heading? What is the blueprint? What happens is, prematurely we begin practicing, not knowing where we are going. Everybody is practicing, but where are we practicing for what? Where are we heading? What are we trying to find? From my understanding, what we are trying to find is that completeness or Poornata which we seem to have lost. It reflects in everything. It reflects in isolating ourselves and saying we are special. It reflects in saying that I am better than the other. It reflects in my trying to say that I am always right. Everybody else is wrong. Young people come to me just before they get married, asking for advice, because they know I'm not wearing a saffron robe, so I'm not a sannyasi, I'm a married man. So they come to me, say, what do you suggest? We are going to get married, sir, some advice. I always tell them, look, no coming together with marriage or without marriage is 100% foolproof, because 2 different individuals are coming together. As long as you start your journey with the understanding that I may not be always right, other side may be right, there is no problem. When I am only right all the time, then we have a problem. Just one little thing. In the same way, what I am trying to say, when the mind is free of likes and dislikes, when it recognizes the divinity in oneself, the essence of one's being. When, as Patanjali says in the Yoga Darshana, all the vrittis of the chitta are washed away. What are vrittis? They are the distractions, they are the tensions, they are the opposing ideas to which the mind keeps occupied all the time. And such a mind which is caught up in distractions, constantly occupied in diffusing the tensions, doesn't have energy to find the truth. Because even according to the Upanishads, to find the truth, to find the reality, one needs complete energy, total energy. And every day our energy is dissipated by these distractions, by these tensions, by belief, non-belief, all that things that happen to us. Hatred and sometimes excessive attraction. Both, this way and that. So, according to as Patanjali says, if you can free the mind of these distractions, obviously it is possible, otherwise Patanjali wouldn't have said it, then you can lead a life right here on this earth, going through all, people come and say, I want to give up everything, all work and go to Madanapalli. And I ask them, then do what? What do you come and do in Madanapalli? 4 years ago, there was some kind of a rumor going around that the world is going to end, right? So somebody called me up and said, I'm coming to Madanapalli. I said, for what? The world is going to end. I said, Madanapalli is also part of the world. The world is going to end, it's also going, there is no safe heaven anywhere in the world. It's going to end, it's going to end, so stay in your place. He said, is the world going to end? I said, every day the world ends in some way or the other. When our unfulfilled desires happen, we are dead for some time, right? Every day we die. So if you can take it as a movement of life, constant movement of life, if we can free ourselves of the distractions through various means, then one day the mind which becomes quiet and tranquil realizes that there is an inner being which is full of joy, which is Purna, which is complete. And all who have understood this have seen that completeness in others. They never see the incompleteness. See, this is interesting to note. Suppose I find, suppose, may not be, okay, I may be an idiot. Suppose I have found a spark of the divine in myself. If I have found it, I certainly have found that spark in everyone else. Whether you know it or whether you don't know it, that's not my problem. I have found it. Which is why somebody defined a particular kind of socialism. And Swami Vivekananda was talking in the West. He one day said, I am a socialist. So people got a little worried. How can this man be a socialist? We thought he's a Vedanti. He said, first he said, because half a crumb is better than no bread at all. He said that, being a man who spoke his mind. And then he said, what I mean to say is that all theories of socialism and equality have failed in the world. Economic equality doesn't work. Power never becomes equal. It has all failed. But he said, for me, I'm in Vedanta, and I understand that the same Atman which is in me is also the Atman in everyone. If that is so, from that point of view, we are all equal. The Atman may not have manifested itself much in some maybe it is in the process of manifesting, and in some it might have fully manifested and understood what Purna means. But the very fact that if it is in me, it has to be in others, and there is a spark of the divine means we are all in some way the same, we are not different. Now, having said this, so I was saying, so the 4 chapters of the Yoga Sutras, the first is about the map, What are we trying to find out? This is called the Samadhi Pada. Please now, nowadays sometimes if you say Samadhi, people think it's when somebody is dead and you put a stone there in that Samadhi. Samadhi is a state of exalted being where the mind is without fear, where the mind is completely quiet and tranquil, with no distractions whatever. That mind understands what Samadhi is all about. So the first chapter is Samadhi Pada. Second chapter is Sadhana Pada, which means what practices are to be done to get there. Just remember this, whatever practices are described, the most important is that the mind has to be made free of distracting thoughts, opposing thoughts, thoughts which take away your attention from the main process in which we are involved. This is the practice of yoga. Yoga need not necessarily mean that you stand on your head, which is also yoga, of course, but there is yoga that keeps your body fit, there is yoga that keeps your mind fit, but the ultimate essence of yoga is that the mind is allowed to settle down and absorb itself in the essence of one's being. This is yoga. And then, not important, the next two chapters, Vibhuti Pada and Kaivalya. Kaivalya, it's a beautiful word. In Vedanta, the ultimate state is called moksha. In Sankhya and Yoga, the ultimate state is called Kaivalya. In the Buddhist teachings, it is called nirvana. Now, Kaivalya is a word that is derived from the word kevalam, only. When one reaches Kaivalya, then there's some protest going on out there. Starts at a young age, mind you. Showing that I'm here, okay. Kaivalya is from the root word kevala, which means only. So when the mind is absolutely free of all dross, when the mind is completely quiet, when there is no tension whatsoever, when it's not doing anything for anything but just staying quiet, in that state of mind, there is only one, there is no two. That quiet mind no longer can even be called a mind, it is Purusha. This is also, you must understand, the Yoga Darshana is derived 70% from Sankhya Darshana. The Ishvara of Sankhya is the yogi who has reached Kaivalya. When everything is gone and there is only the pure consciousness. Now, one of the shorter Upanishads, one of the shortest of course is Mandukya, but one of the shorter Upanishads is the Ishavasya Upanishad. It's interesting, it's very important that at this point we look into this great Sri Aurobindo has written a good commentary and translation on the Ishavasya Upanishad. It starts in a beautiful way. The Upanishad starts by saying, Ishavasyamidam sarvam etkincha jagatyam jagat. Ishavasyamidam sarvam, that supreme Isha pervades everything here. Kaivalya is not after death, Kaivalya is now. Idam. That supreme reality pervades everything here and now. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. It pervades everything that moves. The word jagat in Sanskrit comes from the word jagatyam, which means that which moves. Now if you look carefully, there is nothing that does not move. Time, the concept of time is because of change. And what is change? Movement. You can't even think of time if there is no movement, there is no growth, there is no change. All change is movement. When an atom disintegrates by itself and becomes another element, like uranium for instance, then change is happening. Everything is changing every day, every second. If you ask a biologist, he will tell you that every day thousands of cells in our body are destroyed and 1,000 new cells come up. Not thousands, maybe more. This movement is constant. Everything moves. Therefore, it is the mind that doesn't move that gets stuck. Everything moves. Now, in this movement, constant movement, the earth moves, we know that. The galaxy moves. Time moves. Growth, change, everything is movement. Mind, what about the mind? Does it move? Oh my God, it only moves most of the time. It's here now and gone there in 1 second. So, in this movement, within this movement, the silence of the center from which this movement starts is the Supreme Being. Unfortunately for us, it is in every one of us. While we move, while we change, while we grow old, we don't grow younger, right? We grow old, this is change. We grow old, we move, we multiply, we expand, we do this, we do that, and then of course we die. That's normal. You ask anybody, so about anybody else, what about some, oh, he was very poor, then he became very rich, and then he had a big industry, and then, well, then he died. This is common. Somebody was very great, he became a very learned man, then he, and so on and so forth, and then he died. Well, sometimes when people die, if they are respectable people, you are not supposed to say he died, right? There are other words invented by mankind to explain that. So anyway, but death is certain. So is there a deathless element in us? The center around which all the action takes place. It's like the center of a cyclone. You know, there's something called the eye of a cyclone. Everything is moving, but the eye of the cyclone is quiet. But it is that vacuum which sucks everything in. It is the most powerful part of the cyclone, but it doesn't move. Well, Plato put it in a different way. It's a little bit dualistic approach, but it doesn't matter. It's an illustration. He said, there are two things in this universe. One of them is with a capital I. One of them is and is never becoming. The other is not, but is ever becoming. So the incompleteness that we have, that we feel, that we experience, is that which is not, but is always becoming. It is the becoming that causes the problem. Being, which does not become anything, is the essence of our being. And that is felt when the mind is absolutely quiet. It can happen with a great deal of devotion. It can happen to some people by analyzing and figuring out, well, this is what it is. It can also happen through the practice of what we generally term to be yoga. It need not necessarily be physical yoga. And this happens, then the mind realizes its vast potential. And the meaning of the Upanishadic statement, Poornamada, Poornamidam, becomes clear. That's all I wanted to say. So, if you have any questions related to this matter, please ask me. I always make this clear that this is my subject, so anything to do with this, please ask me. Only no political questions, please. So, what are the qualities of us? Oh, this is the question Arjuna is asking Krishna in the Gita. Who, according to you, is the greatest of yogis, or one who has felt this in himself? How does he move? How does he behave in this world? What happens to such a person? Now, there is a chapter of the Gita. Since you asked me this question, I am going there. There is a chapter of the Gita which is called Bhakti Yoga, Yoga of Devotion. And that it comes only in the 12th chapter. Because I feel that if Krishna had opened that chapter before, or Vyasa had opened the chapter before, Arjuna wouldn't have understood. So he had to wait till 11 chapters before understanding this Bhakti Yoga, what it means. The reason being that till chapter, I will come to your point, till chapter 9 of the Gita, everything is clear because Arjuna is asking Krishna questions and Krishna is riding he's a chauffeur for some time and they are having a nice conversation. They are friends, they are relatives, almost the same age. What should I do, what I should not do, and so on and so forth. And then comes the 10th chapter. Now in the 10th chapter, Krishna suddenly changes his tone and his speech and his words, and instead of like you and I talking, he suddenly says, among the mountains I am the Meru, among the Himalayas, among the immovables I am the Himachala, and among the Munis I am Kapila, among the Vedas I am the Samaveda, and so on. Now Arjuna is wondering what has happened now. This guy was just sitting in front of me. We were having a nice chat and now he says he's the Meru, but he's red. And then he says he's the Himalaya and he's the great Muni Kapila who passed away long ago. So what is happening here is Arjuna's so-called 1 + 1 logic is being slowly broken. You know, like among the Sufis there is a saying, sometimes 2 + 2 may be 8, which you can't understand arithmetically, of course. So this breaking process is going on. And then comes chapter 11. 11, Arjuna suddenly has a vision of Krishna becoming universal and so many things coming and going inside him. Deities are coming in and going. So by now he said, no, I don't know who this guy is now. His so-called, our ordinary logic, you know, the blueprint which we create with our mind and senses is almost broken. Then comes Bhakti Yoga. Okay, what is the question that Arjuna has? Interesting. It comes to the same thing that you asked me, the answer, but question. Arjuna says, some say that the Supreme Being is, like the Rishis said, is formless, all-pervading, almost intangible, which cannot be seen by the senses, which according to the Upanishads, even the mind cannot conceive of. And manasa anamanyute, even the mind. Some say this is the reality. Some say that this reality reflected in you, like you are sitting here before me, or any of the avatars, or the great teachers who have come before. You can also consider the divine to be them. The question Arjuna is asking is, according to you, which is the proper way of worshipping that truth? Should be with form or without form? Okay. Now, Krishna as usual goes about it. You know, Krishna never talks anything directly, you must have noticed in the Mahabharata. And so he always drops a seed and allows it to sprout and then stands like this looking. So Krishna says, listen, the mode of worship is not important. Whether you worship me, then of course he explains that we live in a world of nama rupa, of name and form, so it's very difficult for an ordinary human being to fix his attention on the supreme formless being. Yes, but the rishis have worshipped the supreme being like that, so it must be right, so true. But normally it's not so easy. However, so what happens? Even if we don't worship images, we worship the Guru, or we worship a symbol, because the mind cannot conceive, the limited mind, of something that vast. So perhaps there is an intermediary there. But he says that is not the most important thing. The modus of worship, modus operandi of worship is not most important. He says, I would consider a person to be, this is the question you asked, I would consider a person to be a great human being, a realized human being, a great yogi, except that in this chapter, because it is bhakti yoga, in some places he is also called a bhakta. I consider such a bhakta to be dear to me. Yaha bhakta same priya. Who? Certain qualities have to be there. Certain attributes have to be there. If these attributes are not there, no matter how we worship, it doesn't matter. I don't consider such a person to be a great yogi or a great bhakta. But if these three attributes are there, whether he worships with form or without form, it's not important. Attributes have to be there. So what are the attributes? Arjuna asks. Krishna says one quality. Samniyam indraya gramam, one who has control over his senses and mind, of course, because the mind is made up of the senses. The impressions of the senses go to make the mind. So one who has control over his senses, which means over his emotions, over his anger, over his dislikes, over everything, even likes. One who has control, you can't hear me, yeah. Over emotions. Second attribute, sarvatra samabuddhaya, which means one whose mind is tranquil under all circumstances, good or bad, positive or negative, whose mind is balanced and sarvatra, in all situations, sama, equal, buddhaya, quiet and tranquil mind. Third, very important, I think if this attribute is not there in a human being, it cannot be a yogi. And that is sarva bhuta hite rata, who always thinks of the welfare of all living beings. If these three, at least in some proportion, are there, perhaps one can say that this person has found something inside. We are nobody to judge, but the person knows himself or herself. Yes. So this requires a great deal of practice, because naturally the mind is not tranquil. It is agitated, it's thinking of this, it is thinking of that, it reacts to situations, it gets angry, it gets depressed. This is the normal situation of the mind. So how to bring about a change? It's only through constant practice that this is possible. Now, when the mind becomes quiet and tranquil, it doesn't mean it becomes a dead body, okay? It is very active. Today I am here, tomorrow I am somewhere else. I am perhaps so active that I wonder if people younger than me, half my age, are as active as I am. I am not a dead body, okay? So, yeah. So the mind, when it needs, you have to first see that the complications are caused by the agitation of the mind, and then decide first that I need to be free of the agitation of the mind. If I think that I need not be free of the agitations of the mind, then there is no question. You don't have to move anywhere. You can stay as you are. But if you feel, well, this is a cause of problems for me, I need to break through, I need to move out of this, then the whole process of what is called Ashtanga Yoga is there for us to practice. One, if you are devotionally minded, then you can also get so much absorbed in your deity that the mind ceases to become, what do you call that? Agitated. Or if you are so intellectually and one-pointedly involved in the examination of this truth, then also it is possible that the mind will settle down. But it is clear that unless and until the mind settles down and is quietened, it cannot touch that which is the essence of one's consciousness. Sometimes people bring this about through karma yoga, which means action, serving people who are unfortunate. When you do that, also the mind settles down. All the practices of sadhana, mantra japa, pranayam are all made to bring about this change. But one has to, intention should be there. If I am agitated and I am okay with that, then there is no point. Yes, when I am sitting down and closing my eyes, or when I am opening my eyes and I see the world around me, there is a witness, right? Something is witnessing, somebody is witnessing. You would say that the brain is witnessing. Even behind the brain there is a witness, which is witnessing all that is happening and saying that the brain is witnessing and the mind is witness. So there is a witness, right? This witness, according to our understanding, is the essence of our consciousness. That is the center. When all the agitations are removed, when I say agitations, I mean distractions. When all the distractions are removed, then that center of consciousness, which is the witness of everything, becomes very, very manifest. That is every human being's center. It has no location. You can't locate it. You can't locate consciousness except in a human being, because we use the brain to think. You can say the consciousness is operating from the brain. But actual fact, the consciousness has no place to be located. Because it is not a material object. Samadhi is the word used to describe Kaivalya. Kaivalya is when the mind that is free of all distractions is tranquil and peaceful, is enjoying the bliss of its own existence. This is Kaivalya. Then there is freedom, because then your reactions and actions come out of compassion. They don't come out of a reaction. Right? That state is called Kaivalya. But the change of consciousness which has happened to you, which has brought about that, is Samadhi. Get what I am trying to say? Somewhat. Somewhat is fair enough. Are you uncomfortable with it?
It creates a lot of restless. Like I finish my meditation, I expect that I will be calm and like sattvic and peaceful, and then I'm like full power.
Are you using any particular center to meditate?
Quite often I meditate upon the Ajna chakra.
Not the Manipur.
Not the Manipur. Or I just observe my breath, or like witnessing the mind, the thoughts, trying to come to my center, something like that.
Okay. It has happened to many people who have practiced meditation. But if you is not so unbearable for you, if it's not too unbearable for you, allow it to be. Because it's probably the inner fire that is burning away the dross. So just see for some time if it subsides by itself. That something is happening means something is going on. You're not wasted your time, something is going on. It's perhaps the fire that is, it's called in the Upanishad, that the fire of desire for fulfillment is called the fire of Nachiketas. You know the story of Nachiketas, who went to the Lord of Death to understand the truth. I mean, it's a story, of course, but so the fire of desire that takes one to the higher realm is the Agni that was worshipped from ancient times. So it's probably burning away the dross. As long as it doesn't cause any physical injury to you, don't worry about it. Leave it. It will probably settle down. If it's naturally your mind is going here, allow it to go. If it's automatically coming to the heart, allow it to be. After some time it will find its space by itself. It will find itself, its proper space. You don't have to worry too much about it. One thing is clear, as long as the thoughts are coming and going, whether they are coming from us or whether coming from outside, many thoughts come from our background, our subconscious mind, our life in the past, how we are brought up in society, what we study, what we learn. Many of our thoughts are part of that. But thoughts can also come from outside. Like we can be influenced, for instance, by advertisements. Every day we see so many advertisements on TV, on newspaper, on internet. These also become part of our mind, thought. So thoughts are based on the experiences that you have through your senses, plus the thoughts that we have studied and learned from various other books. And now when many people come to me after seeing the YouTubes, right? So they already have a thought about me, which may not be the real, right? So they have seen. So instead of trying to figure out what is the source of the thought, you cannot figure out the source of the thoughts unless and until the stream of thought begins to flow a little more calmly and quietly. Now, when I say I am seeing the thoughts coming, even the one who is seeing the thoughts coming is a thought. I know people who say I am in a thoughtless state, then who is saying that? Right? So, everything is thought. So when you realize this, and when you allow it to subside, how do you allow it to? By carefully looking, knowing, being aware of the fact that one who is looking is also part of the same thought process. When you do that, when it settles down at least to some extent, then you will probably be able to find the source. Otherwise, no matter whatever I say, you can't find the source. I can theoretically give you an answer. Okay, having said this, since you asked this question, we feel that our thoughts are continuous. They started from somewhere and they're going on and on, like this young lady said, till you die, perhaps. It goes on and on. Now, when these, in the olden days we had this, film projector. Have you seen the old films? Now it is all digital. Old films. In one frame, for a person to raise his hand this way, up, it was divided into many scenes, right? But when it was played at a particular speed on the reel, it continued, it looked like a continuous chain. We are saying that thoughts are also like that. One thought comes and vanishes, another thought takes its place. But the small gap between the old thought going and the new thought coming is infinitesimally small and we cannot grasp it. Therefore, we think there is a continuous chain of thought going on. When actually, one thought comes, goes, another thought comes. It's so fast that it looks like a chain. Sometimes when you sit quietly, it may not be when you are meditating, you are sitting quietly under a tree near the beach somewhere. Try to see if you can find out the junction where one thought is gone and another thought is just coming. Try. May not succeed always. If you can find that gap, perhaps you have found the source of thought. This is not an answer, I know. Food for thought. Rare, very rare, but I think possible. Because if there is total contentment, there will be total happiness. If there is total happiness, then there is peace. It's rare, but it can happen. See what happens. We all try to do that. And then what happens? Then when some people see that this person is a little bit special, and then they start giving too much respect to that person, and then that person's tranquility is destroyed. See, I'm not joking, seriously. So one has to be very careful. One has to at least be honest to oneself and say, where do I stand? Otherwise what happens, the image building of others intrudes upon ourselves. And then we begin, my teacher, Maheshwarnath Babaji, who was of course from the Nath Sampradaya, but he was from the Nath Sampradaya, but he had no such all-encompassing. He told me once, no matter what others think about you, don't worry, you can do nothing about it. People can think about you as a saint, or they can think about you as an idiot, or whatever. Not important. The moment you begin to think about yourself, what they are thinking about you, you're sunk. So we should always keep this in mind. When people praise you too much, you have to watch out carefully. Am I going to sink? When people criticize you too much, you should watch, am I going to sink? Am I going to take this as a personal affront? Am I going to sink? So if that can be kept, perhaps this contentment can come slowly. Believe me, when the mind is contented and at peace, it's not a dead mind. It's really a very active mind full of energy. But the energy will certainly not be used for negative purposes. That's it.
That means my flow of thinking, I'm not going any wrong way.
I don't know, this is not a question of wrong or right in the moral sense of the term. It is not a moral principle, it's a practical thing. Like the Jains, they practice non-violence. They don't practice non-violence as a moral thing. They practice non-violence because non-violence calms the mind, makes you better. So they practice non-violence, not because it is a moral thing to practice non-violence. No, If I go, suppose, the mind is such a thing that one mind affects the other mind. It's normal. If somebody yawns when you're sitting, the yawn is reflected. Very soon you'll see many people yawning. The mind seems to be linked in some way. Apart from that, suppose let's say I'm not belonging to any particular society, whatever, and I go and I find somebody speaking, and then they blow the trumpets and the drum, and they wear a certain uniform, and they declare we are saving the earth and so on. It's very natural and possible that my mind also gets caught up in that. Those thoughts may come into my mind. So it is true that we human beings think we are independent thinkers, but we are not. We are influenced by every thought that moves around us. So we should keep this in mind and make sure that while you can't stop the other thoughts from coming in, you should maintain a stability in which you don't let it interfere with your thinking. By thinking. How do you do that? This is another problem. If there is a spiritual teacher, suppose, I don't know, she thinks so, and then people want a formula. How do I do it? Do it. I mean, how do I do it? Do I have any formula for that? If I could, I would have been very happy. I haven't seen Sri Aurobindo physically in my life. I can only say from what I have read and what have been told to me. And from what I have read and what has been told to me, I understand that he was a great yogi, no question about that. I don't have any such. Well, at one time he was a nationalist. If you may probably not know that he is one person who first started a newspaper in Calcutta called Vande Mataram. Today for many secularists, Vande Mataram is a bad word. So, but then, when he went to jail, when he was arrested and put in Alipur jail, he got out of that role and became a highly spiritual person. So that 1 year in which he was in jail, when normally people would have fretted and fumed and planned how to take revenge and so on, he came out a yogi. And then he came to Pondicherry and settled down here. Partly because also the place is beautiful and there is the sea, and then it is not a British dominion where people can't again catch you. Alipur bomb blast case is not over, come back. So he lived in peace, and if you read Savitri or Integral Yoga or any of his works, you will find that there is a great deal of wisdom in this person. So I do consider him to be a great yogi. But personally, I have not. How can I have met him?
Have you met him in the astral world?
No. I'm a little worried about this astral. Believe me, it's by mistake I mentioned somewhere, not by mistake, mentioned in one of my books something about the subtle body and the physical body. So on. The astral, let's not go into the astral right now. It's a word which has become astral, kundalini. These words have become so popular, I don't know, popular or prominent, that it is dangerous to even touch these words. They may be there. I'm not saying they're not there. You go into the internet, you can arouse your kundalini in 2,000 rupees in one sitting. No. For me, it was a very compulsive feeling. because I wanted that and I worked towards it. So I didn't care for other things. I went straight ahead. I ran away from home, left all the comforts of life and pursued only one thing, which I thought if I had failed, I would have ended up in an asylum or somewhere. Luckily for me, it happened. Something happened, let's say. I'll say I was normal, I became abnormal, subnormal, so whatever you want to call it. But it all depends on how much you really want to do it. Some people want to study science and discover something. They go whole hog, fully into it. And then they come out successful, sometimes they fail. In same way, for me that was the main interest in my life, so I went that way. If that is not your main interest in life, and if you read my autobiography, for instance, and say that possibility is there, that there is something like that, then you should not suddenly jump into it. You should follow both and see. You should carry on with your work, your career. If you don't do that, then I'm sure your parents would be very upset about it also. But I didn't care. I think in some way I feel I was unkind to my mother. In those days I was not thinking of all that. I was so fired by this. So I think it's good to go side by side until you develop a complete... And also, if one person has put his finger into the fire and got burnt, you don't have to put your finger also into the fire to see if it will burn. Right? So I have given my experiences. You could derive a lot of benefit from there. And instead of running off to the Himalayas, you can sit at home and try to work these things out, meanwhile pursuing your studies or whatever you're doing. So for me it was an all-consuming interest. And from some angle it would look like it was very selfish. But finally I didn't turn into a shellfish. I became normal. So. Certainly. One of the things about food, according to yoga, according to yama niyamas of yogic practice, one of the things about food is that you do everything in moderation. First, some people say we eat only sattvic food, but if you see that one meal, 10 poor people can eat for 3 days. That's not sattvic food. When you say sattvic food, it means don't eat too much, don't starve yourself. One part of the other. If you can live without causing injury to animals, don't tell me the plants are also living and that is... if you can eat food without causing injury to animals, then it's better to do that. Otherwise we talk so much about compassion and love and things like that, but when it comes to food, it's the taste that dictates the food. This is not yama niyama. And I have noticed that especially when you're doing your sadhana, this is like people who talk about conserving water and have 4 baths a day. Because we have to keep our body pure, you see. So anyway, I have seen that especially when you practice yoga, meditation practices, yogic practices, vegetarian food is very conducive to the practice. Yes. So, apart from the feeling that I can live without killing animals, but when I teach yoga, I tell people, don't wait for that to happen because then they will not learn anything. I said, you practice, but a time will come when you seriously feel that you have to give it up. Give it up.
Can anyone attain
When you say whatever you to attain, meaning what?
Can a yogi take a tamasic food?
Yogi, by inclination, will not want to take tamasic food. He will not want to take tamasic food because he will think of the injury to animals. Also, when you practice yoga, when you do spiritual, yeah, of course, people sometimes do some sacrifice to the devata and have some food as prasad and so on. But I think it's basically to eat the prasad than to sacrifice. But let's not get so. See, look, I know many good people who are non-vegetarians. Let me put it this way. Very good people. It's not that. I'm saying from the spiritual point of view, it's always good to stay away. I know people who feed sugar to ants every morning, who don't eat garlic or onions, but who don't mind bumping a business partner. Is that non-violence? Seriously. So, all this we have to take with a certain moderation. Swami Vivekananda ate everything. But he did things which everybody cannot do. I asked the other day, somebody was smoking and he said, why Swamiji also smoked? I said, yeah, he did many other things. Can you do it? It's very easy to copy things which are easy to copy. And please remember that in those days, nobody knew that smoking was so bad to the lungs. But then people always say that he must have been omnipotent or omniscient, he should have known. Why are we making people omniscient? You might have developed to a great extent, but you are still a human being, you have your limitations. Yes? So be practical on these matters. If you ask me by choice, it's good to have simple, good vegetarian food. When I go abroad, I see like places like Finland, Scandinavian countries and so on, where people are usually quite vegetarian, non-vegetarian at one time. The taste is the problem. So now they have vegan steaks. Not even vegetarian, vegan. No milk products. Carrying it to an extreme. But anyway, but they make steak and apparently it tastes like the real steak. So it is the taste that seems to matter. So can we have some control over it? If I cannot control it, how will I control my mind? Do you love no personal questions. No.
So there is a part of me that sort of questions.
Maybe you are one of the rare ones. Who knows? Who knows? Don't take that literally. What I meant was that it doesn't always happen. People are involved in so many activities. Who is looking for tranquility of mind? But there may be some. That's what I meant, not to discourage you.
I thought the path is that tough, then why even bother starting?
No, don't do that, please. All serious things may be a little tough to do. How can a tranquil mind indulge in violent activity? Just tell me, how is this possible?
Because sometimes it is absolutely necessary. Because
Oh, necessary.
Is on the wrong.
Oh, necessary, where you are protecting yourself or something like that. But then, you may do it as a, I'm not saying you should do it, but if you do it at all, in the mind there should be no hatred. Is this possible? Is this possible to not have hatred? Like if somebody is attacking your home and you want to protect yourself, naturally you want to protect yourself, you may take a danda. But don't after that say that this fellow is a terrible fellow, is a bad fellow. He is doing it because the guy doesn't have anything. He wants to take away from you. I'm not saying leave the doors open, no. So, as long as the heart doesn't have a hatred, it's okay. But that should not be an excuse. Oh, I asked Sri M and he said it is okay. So what happens? So tomorrow onwards I carry a danda with me. No. According to circumstances. Okay, now we should wind up. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.